Donald Trump, the president of the United States, turned quickly to attacking the left. That was made possible because of the murderous act perpetrated yesterday against conservative activist Charlie Kirk. I mean, to call Charlie Kirk a conservative activist is to greatly undersell what Charlie Kirk was. He was a transformational figure in the conservative movement. And what he understood was something that the old school conservatives didn't get. I mean, the Mitt Romneys of the world, even the Mitch McConnells of the world, didn't get the power of media, didn't get the way in which you can use media, didn't understand the real work that Charlie Kirk was doing with young Americans. And Charlie Kirk, he rallied a tremendous number of young people to show up at the polls this past election cycle. And Charlie Kirk was someone who the Trump family recognized as transformational. And I say the Trump family deliberately because Donald Trump was less aware of Charlie Kirk, I think I can argue effectively, than, for example, his son was. His son, Don Jr., was the one who brought him into the Trump world. And it was Charlie Kirk's power and effective manipulation of media. I mean, he was a good speaker. He brought the arguments that he had defending a conservative vision of America. And again, when I say conservative vision, it's a MAGA vision, which you could argue no longer represents conservatism. It represents something else. Conservatism would be less government. Conservatism would be a lot of things associated with personal freedoms that are now very much threatened. You can start with the women's right to choose. You can go on to even free speech, which is being threatened in many ways. Shutting down of media, the government involved in everything from an ownership in Intel to a powerful finger on the scale when it comes to the legal profession as a result of attacking legal institutions and law firms in Washington, et cetera. So these are all things that really fly in the face of any traditional conservatism that would take government away from all of that, right? You want less government affecting everything I just mentioned and beyond. But that then doesn't really represent what Charlie Kirk was talking about. He quickly became immersed in MAGA Nation. And Trump, as I say, the Trump family, they brought Charlie Kirk in close to them, and he became a part of the Trump team. And so when it came time to really roll out an election strategy, Charlie Kirk was a big, big part of it. So it is no wonder to me that Donald Trump is memorializing Charlie Kirk. And I'd say in the amount of time spent today talking about 9/11 memorializing and Charlie Kirk memorializing, Charlie Kirk wins that race. And the reason I think that's noteworthy is I think it speaks to priorities. So Charlie Kirk's powerful hand was something that was so very effective in creating a movement. And Turning Point USA was his baby. I mean, this young guy created Turning Point USA. And he went on to college campuses. He went to places where he could get healthy debate. Now, you could say it was like pro wrestling. He was kind of taking on debaters with an understanding that he was going to, have them shouted down by the crowd that collected. But to be fair to Charlie Kirk, I thought he really took on those who disagreed with him and those who were bringing the heat. He took them on regularly. That was kind of something that he liked doing. But also, to be fair to the argument, that Charlie Kirk wasn't some regular old school conservative. This is a guy who had some very strong, loathsome views of the America that he saw. He made comments that were openly racist. Didn't he say something when when I see that there's a black pilot on the plane, I get worried?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He had
some pretty interesting views about women as well.
Thank you. I was
Recently,
trying to figure out how to package it. Yeah.
He just said to Taylor Swift when she announced her engagement to Travis Kelce that it's time for her to obey her husband and that she better change her last name from Swift to Kelce or she won't really be meaning it. I mean, that's the tip of the iceberg on misogyny. That's how I hope he's remembered, for the things he said. That's what his legacy should be, not what appears to be some type of martyrdom that's in the works right now.
The reality is what Kim's talking about. There's been a whitewashing a bit of who Charlie Kirk was. And again, I've just said it and I'll say it over and over again. The murder of Charlie Kirk is completely unacceptable, and any political violence and any violence at all is completely unacceptable. I mean, full stop. But it's not fair to cherry pick who Charlie Kirk was, just like it's not fair to cherry pick political violence and suggest that it all comes from the left or it all comes from the right. I mean, the preponderance of evidence is that political violence in America right now is really very much carried out by the right. But that said, I don't want to whitewash that either. But whitewashing, which we often do, to be fair, when someone passes away, we kind of lionize them. We kind of just speak of them in ways in which we can all understand the mourning that takes place and the loss of this guy to his kids, to his wife. It's horrible. It's just heartbreaking. But who he was shouldn't be lost in all of this either. Karen Cooper says in the chat, I hadn't seen Charlie Kirk until I watched a video this morning. He was a big part of the increase in hate and violence in the U.S. that led to his ultimate destruction. Again, it is weirdly ironic. There's so much irony here, tragic irony. It is true. I got also an email about that. Now, those of us sort of in this political conversation regularly, we know Charlie Kirk. We know who he is. But I got this just this morning. Let me just...
I've received a lot of positive letters.
I heard the news about Charlie Kirk yesterday as it was breaking. And for the life of me, I said to myself, who is that? Who is Charlie Kirk? My wife then said, well, you don't watch Fox News, so it's no wonder you don't know. I don't watch Fox News, nor do I use social media, he says. I'm not influenced by people who say they are influencers, I guess. What does this say about me? I'm old or I'm out of touch? I'm not sure. I watch TV news, I read Apple News on my iPhone, listen to KCBS News here in the Bay Area several times a day. I also listen to the Mark Thompson show. Which one of you is Mark Thompson? I used to listen to KGO before it did whatever it did. Ron Owens, Jim Eason, Pete Wilson, my favorite, Gene Burns. But I never heard of Charlie Kirk. Now I have. That's from A. Barton. Thank you for the email. I think Charlie Kirk might be someone that you wouldn't know if you're not in the media sphere that covers so much of what he does. But I would say that Turning Point USA, that was a pretty big movement. I mean, to not know that, I think, shows maybe a little bit of a blind spot. But to be fair, you may be focusing on your own set of priorities. When it comes to news, there's a lot to cover. So I think it's perfectly excusable if you didn't know Turning Point USA. But they, and this is why I wanted to make the point, they turned out a vote that, in my judgment, was more relevant to the winning that President Trump did in this last election than even Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan and many like him got the anti-vax movement a sort of critical mass. I think a lot of people were single-issue voters on anti-vaxxing. They didn't like the way things were handled under the Biden administration in relation to the vaccine, and that brought a lot of people to the polls. And then after that, I think it got hazy to them on policy. They filled the empty vessel of Donald Trump with whatever they wanted. Bad economy, immigration, whatever it might be. But what Charlie Kirk did was well beyond Joe Rogan. He motivated young people from college campuses to the youth of America who could really relate to him, and he motivated them in ways that, again, represented the MAGA sphere. It's what Kim is talking about. There was a lot of racism, sexism. There was, at its core, a kind of hate. Albert, you have...
Can I just mention, I just want to mention that I agree with the person who wrote the letter. I was also someone who didn't pay attention to Charlie Kirk, didn't agree with the message, and so kind of dismissed it as just this noise that I wasn't interested in hearing. But I was very surprised that yesterday, my daughter in the North Bay in high school called me. Everyone in high school, she said, at her school was watching the video as it happened of Kirk getting shot. Same thing with a friend of mine, Nikki Maduro, in the South Bay. Her daughter also called her from high school, letting her know that Charlie Kirk was shot. Kids in high school know who he is across the Bay Area. And if they know in the Blue Bay Area, they certainly are talking about it across the country. I underestimated, I think, the reach that he had when it comes to young people in this country. And I was surprised that they all knew who he was. And I will also say, as someone said, they spent time watching videos of him yesterday because they had no idea who he was. That's something that conservatives are talking about and saying that somehow, this makes it okay, not okay, but more palatable, I guess, because now everyone knows who he is and now everyone's talking about him and now his message is being spread far and wide so he can rest in peace because he's done what he needed to do. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, his reach to particularly a younger group of people is super noteworthy, and that was his intent, to bring Turning Point USA to those younger people. So, right, it takes a younger person oftentimes to message to a younger population. We talk about political messaging on this show all the time. I think it's critical. I think that Charlie Kirk might have evolved, if he wanted to, into the kind of political figure who could have ascended to the presidency. He had that kind of constituency.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really how it's built. It's built through social media, through messaging. He went to universities, he went to schools. There was a lot of outreach. He did a lot of the heavy lifting. Yes, he was with Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom had Charlie Kirk in, and that was in the podcast, a massive, massive controversy. How many people in this country died yesterday, asked Christine Park. His death is no sadder than any of theirs. Well, it's not a question of sadder, but I would say his death is significant for the violence that it can actually produce to uncork the sort of political violence. I'm seeing references to it on Facebook. I'm seeing all sorts of references to, okay, now it's on. If this is what you wanted, I can see we tried it the peaceful way. Now we'll try it a different way. Flying a flag at half-staff is insulting to the flag, actually, says Read More History. His murder is wrong, tragic, but he was a merchant of hatred. He just was. Well, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but yes, it's true. The president has asked for the flags in Washington to run at half-staff. He will, as I'm told, I believe his casket was traveling on Air Force Two, the vice president's plane, and J.D. Vance is actually squiring his remains back to Washington or wherever they're going. I was reading that just maybe an hour ago. But as to who he was, we'll get to that, and I think there are some pretty good thoughts on this. You want to start with that Jeff Sharlet cut? He's a professor at Dartmouth, And here's a little bit of him talking about both Kirk and this moment in time in America.
Amongst right-wingers and reading right-wing media and fascist media and understanding their imagination of the moment, which is, look, I'm not going to take away that they've lost one of their own, and I don't doubt some of them mourn him, but you also see a certain amount of glee rippling through that world. The language that I keep seeing is the gloves are off, everything's on the table. It's on. Now it's time to do it, right? So there's a sense in which rather than mourning their fallen comrade, they're seeing it as, some are seeing it as license to further escalate political violence.
Well, Jeff, Charlotte, if you could just provide some broader context, explain who Charlie Kirk was and the kind of extremely broad influence that he had. I mean, some have commented that, in fact, he was more important for Trump than some of his cabinet secretaries.
Yeah, this is what I was saying. Certainly, in terms
I
of
really think this is he's one of the great underestimated figures outside right-wing organizing circles, and that's because he had a 3-hour daily, a 3-hour talk show. He had a bigger presence on TikTok than most political figures. And so he was misunderstood as an influencer, and he was that. But primarily and fundamentally, what he was an organizer, and a very, very effective one. Political analysts quibble over how essential he was to swinging so much of the youth vote to Trump. But there's no question that he was a huge, huge part of it. And he did that by transforming far-right youth politics in America. The previous organizations had always been built around ideology, rather it was a kind of a William F. Buckley conservatism or libertarianism. And Kirk's insight was absolute devotion to the great leader, cult of personality, a central tenet of fascism. His politics would change. His enemies were Trump's enemies, whoever that was that day. He was in so many ways, and I think Trump viewed him this as the son he really wanted to have. A figure of tremendous influence, and I think that's important for us to understand, because the scale of the right-wing reaction is going to correlate with that.
Professor Charlotte, talk about Turning Point USA. What is the significance of this organization and his role in building it?
Guys, I kind of spoken to that already. I don't think I need to see this part, but thank you. I like the first part because I thought it really did speak to who he was, since so many, I think, here didn't know who he was, weren't familiar with him particularly. I really just wanted that first part for that. I also want to just, because I'm seeing in the chat people going, you got to be kidding me. Are they really going to go with the flags at half-staff? President Donald Trump ordering flags to be flown at half-staff following the fatal shooting of conservative influencer Charlie Kirk at a Turning Point USA event at Utah Valley University in Utah. Trump ordered the flags across the nation at military posts and at embassies to remain flown at half-staff until September 14th. This according to a White House proclamation. He was shot during this Q&A. He was 31 years old, as you know. He was shot during this bizarre moment. And I say bizarre because, again, the scene is dripping with tragedy, but tragic irony. He was a real proponent of Second Amendment rights, meaning of gun rights. And it was in a moment and questioning of Kirk by someone in the audience about gun rights and about mass shootings. It was at that moment that and during that exchange, that he was shot and killed. I've heard every manner of conspiracy about who might be behind it. I even heard today, I just heard this morning, I guess it has to be today. It's just today and yesterday will run together, I saw the most remarkable thing. I saw that it's a fake. He's still alive. Still shots from the video yesterday as he tips left. You see the blood going this way, not going that way. I saw this entire thing. I saw a lot of it.
Mhm.
I mean, so you're telling me that Charlie Kirk faked his own death to do what? He was already ahead of this incredible movement that likely would have produced another election win. He's going to rob his kids, 3 and 1 years of age, of a future dad? Come on. So, I mean, I've seen every manner of everything, and I've even seen sort of a more elegant conspiracy theory. And as you know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but sometimes I think just because you're a conspiracy theorist doesn't mean there really isn't a conspiracy about the thing you're talking about. But on this one, we really have to wait and see. We really just don't know. So I'm the more elegant one is that it was set up by the right, that this is a designed hit, and you don't shoot someone from 200 yards away unless you're an experienced marksman. That said, there is a picture that's been released by the FBI. Albert, you have that? Here's the latest on the picture that they've identified a person of interest in. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Diane Macedo. Let's get right to breaking news. The FBI is asking for help identifying this man who they are calling a person of interest in the shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Sources tell ABC News ammunition found with the rifle was engraved with messages about transgender issues and anti-fascist ideology. Meanwhile, President Trump says he plans to speak to Kirk's family this afternoon. Our Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas has more on that. Pierre, what's the latest on this photo?
Diane, well, here's what we have and here's what we know. This picture is being put out by the FBI and law enforcement because they believe this is a person that they very much want to talk to. I'm told by sources it's from surveillance footage in and around the area where the shooting took place. And you can see this appears to be a male person wearing sunshades and a baseball cap. The FBI very much wants to talk to that person, and they're asking for the public's help in identifying this person so that they can get access to them and begin to interview them. Again, they want the public's help to identify this person so that they can talk to him. This person is being described to me as a person of interest, someone they very much want to talk to. And Diane, what you see unfolding, what you literally see unfolding is what we were discussing yesterday, is that the surveillance footage was going to be the key to the case. That's what my law enforcement sources were telling me last night. They believed that when they canvassed the campus and the areas around the campus, that they would be getting images of the suspect moving about, or a person of interest moving about, I should say. In this case, this is someone that they think could have information about the attack, and they want to talk to this person.
Yeah,
All right, very good. Thank you, Albert. I want to get now to Donald Trump, who has taken this event, and as I say, this memorializing of Charlie Kirk, discussion of who he is occurring in the shadow of the 9/11 memorial, or you could say the 9/11 memorial is occurring in the shadow of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But either way, the two are coming together in the remarks of Donald Trump. Trump speaking at the 9/11 memorial couldn't wait to apparently bring in these acts of political violence and blame the left, and of course talk about his own prosecution and the way he's hounded by the left and the left-wing media as that thing which whips up this sort of political violence. Go ahead, Albert.
Fallen and sent an unmistakable message to every enemy around the world.
He's talking about
if you
9/11,
attack the
of course.
United States of America, we will hunt you down and we will find you. Go all over this sometimes magnificent earth. We will crush you without mercy and we will triumph without question. That's why we named the former Department of Defense the Department of War. It will be different. We won the First World War. We won the Second World War. We won everything before that and in between. And then we decided to change the name. Well, now we have it back to where we all want it. Everybody wanted it. Everybody is so happy to have it back. You will fail and America will win, win, win. The enemy will always fail. 24 years have passed since that Tuesday morning in September, and an entire generation of Americans have come of age in a totally different world. While they cannot remember the agony of that day, they are carrying on the legacy of those who lost. Around 8:30 a.m. on the morning of the attacks, Army Lieutenant Colonel Kip Taylor sent an email to his friends and family describing the joys of fatherhood and his excitement for the upcoming birth of his unborn son. He wrote, after you have kids, there are days that you just get going and you say, "Hi, honey, I'm home." What we do until that moment pales in comparison.
This is
But
all about
just
the
that
9/11
little statement,
responders. But
"Hi,
you'll see
honey."
he'll take his turn here in a minute. Go
So
ahead.
American, so beautiful. But that's really the point of it all, isn't it? An hour after he sent that email, Flight 77 flew into Colonel Taylor's Pentagon office and claimed the life of a very proud father and true patriot. 6 weeks later, on October 25th, 2001, Colonel Taylor's son, Luke, was born. Luke then tragically lost his mom to cancer when he was just 2 years old, leaving him to be raised by his father's brother. As a young boy, Luke asked his uncle about the folded flag on the bookshelf. And when he learned about his dad's decades of devotion to the Army and the horrors of September 11th, that's when he learned. Luke carried that memory with him and joined the ROTC as a college freshman. He graduated just last year, and I'm pleased to say he is with us today as a second lieutenant and doing very well. He's rising quickly in the infantry, preparing for Army Ranger School. The spitting image of his dad, they say, Luke says that every time he puts on a uniform, he feels connected to his father and to our country. But it was a father he never knew. Luke, your parents are together in heaven, and they could not be prouder of the man that they have produced. They produced you. Those two great people produced you. Luke, please stand.
So this is the kind of moment that you often see at these sorts of memorials, and in full uniform, he stands and
Thank
acknowledges
you.
the applause.
You look good, Luke. You look good. They're looking down on you. They're very proud. This morning, we recall the light of America's best and bravest and the love that they showed in their final moments. In their memory, we make a solemn pledge and a noble promise. We will honor always our great heroes. And you are our heroes. There's a group of people that don't want to talk about our heroes, but we will always talk about our heroes. And that's the way our country is, and that's the way the people feel. We will defend the nation they served, the values they upheld, and the freedom for which they died. We will support our troops, we will protect our families, and we will preserve the American way of life for every future generation. We will build taller, grow stronger, fight harder, and soar higher. And together we will go forward as one people with one heart, one fate, one flag, and one glorious destiny under Almighty God. May God bless the memories of those who died and the heroes who fought and the soldiers who still stand watch. May God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Well,
Thank you.
I think we picked that up
Thank
late,
you.
but he was there. I thought one reference, and I'll play you another Trump cut in a second. There are people who don't want to remember these heroes. What is that a reference to?
Who?
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to
remember the
remember?
9/11 heroes? This is the sort of thing that you hear a lot of from Trump and from the MAGA-sphere. They don't want to recognize the heroes. They don't love America as much as we love America. There's a lot of us versus them. I mean, it's all us versus them with Trump. Where's the other Trump stuff? Here you go. Albert has the next cut. from Trump. I don't want you to think
Before
it was
we
all
begin-
9/11 memorializing. Check this out.
Again, let me express the horror and grief so many Americans at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk have felt. Charlie was a giant of his generation, a champion of liberty, and an inspiration to millions and millions of people. Our prayers are with his wonderful wife, Eric, and his beautiful children. Fantastic people they are. We miss him greatly, yet I have no doubt that Charlie's voice and the courage he put into the hearts of countless people, especially young people, will live on. I'm pleased to announce that I will soon be awarding Charlie Kirk posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The date of the ceremony will be announced, and I can only guarantee you one thing, that we will have a very big crowd. Very, very big.
Well, the one thing I would say is that this is the disposition of the president toward Charlie Kirk and to memorializing Charlie Kirk. I told you that the remains of Charlie Kirk will accompany J.D. Vance in Air Force Two. Also told you about the flag at half-staff and the continued degrading of this Presidential Medal of Freedom given posthumously to Kirk. And I'll remind you that it was given to Rush Limbaugh, and Limbaugh really was the inspiration for Charlie Kirk. If you know anything about Charlie Kirk, and apparently a lot of people don't, Charlie Kirk was really inspired by Rush Limbaugh. He was a kid when Rush Limbaugh was really popular, and he used to, during his lunch hour, listen to Rush Limbaugh, and he had a very Rush Limbaugh inspired way of connecting. He really had an us versus them, black versus white way of looking at everything. And he was, Charlie Kirk was a hate monger. But again, in the theater of and forum of ideas, there's no room for violence. This should have been, this hate speech, returned with more speech, not weapons and not bullets. Sorry Dude is not my hero. There's plenty of video evidence supporting that he was a bigot and misogynist. Hope we don't elevate him to 9/11 status, says Luis. Thank you for the $5 super chat. And of course, you're right. Here is a bit of a run that I liked from Schmidt on this. I just want to mention, don't you like Schmidt ahead of Jesse Waters? I don't know, I couldn't take Jesse Waters. Jesse Waters went on with kind of this us versus them thing. You know what I mean? He was reflective of okay, this is what you want. They're coming after us. Okay, now isn't that what he was doing, Albert? I think that that was
just listing the notable assassination or
this is worth noting, and then I'll let you hear Schmidt. Sorry, let me do this. Let you hear Waters last night, and then listen to how political violence is cherry picked by Waters, the same way that Donald Trump cherry picks it when he talks about political violence, to only talk about political violence against the right, and to leave out all of these leftist and centrist and democratic targets of political violence. What's that, Kim?
It feels like when they cherry pick, they're stirring the pot, right? They're stirring the pot so that we have even more of this.
Go ahead. Here's Jesse Waters from last night.
This hits differently because Charlie was one of us. And Trump gets hit in the ear. Charlie gets shot dead. They came after Kavanaugh with a rifle to his neighborhood. They went after Musk's cars. They just shot 2 Jews outside the embassy. Think about it. Scalise got shot, barely survived. It's happening. We got trans shooters. We got riots in LA. They are at war with us. Whether we want to accept it or not, they are at war with us. And what are we going to do about it? How much political violence are we going to tolerate? And that's the question we're just going to have to ask ourselves.
Now, that's, to me, the most incendiary rhetoric that is cherry-picked to establish an us versus them that I've heard. Here are the actual facts for those with conveniently short memories. I think this is out of Maybe Ezra Klein posted this.
It was a different Twitter user I found this.
Different Twitter. Here we go. The man who targeted and killed Democratic state lawmaker Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark in their home in Minnesota was a Trump supporter. The man charged with attempted assassination of Pennsylvania Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro in April was a Trump supporter. The man convicted of orchestrating a series of shootings at the homes of 4 Democratic elected officials in New Mexico in 2022 was a Trump supporter. The man who tried to kidnap then Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and assaulted her husband Paul in 2022 was a Trump supporter. The men who wanted to hang Mike Pence on January 6, 2021 were Trump supporters. The man who killed the son of Obama-appointed district judge Esther Salas in 2020 was a Trump supporter. The men who were convicted of trying to kidnap Michigan's Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer in 2020 were Trump supporters. The man who sent pipe bombs to the homes of Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and other top Democrats in 2018 was a Trump supporter. The man who killed left-wing activist Heather Heyer after driving his car into a crowd of counter-protesters in Charlottesville in 2017 was a Trump supporter. Don't tell me about the attacks on the right and completely leave out the attacks on the left. Don't say, oh, they wanted this. They count on those who are making these arguments. They count on the short memory that you have. Oh, everybody's about Charlie Kirk. It must be, left-wing violence. It's ruling America. No. The proliferation of guns is everywhere. And the violence, the preponderance of it is coming from the right. Again, I decry it all, left or right. But these arguments that are being made in this moment are scary. Political violence only begets more political violence. Violence only begets more violence. You can apply it to the Middle East instead of looking just at America. But there's no question that this is true, what is on screen now. Despicable. The USA president is stoking tensions instead of calling for calm. This is Lakumeka. Play me a little bit of Schmidt today. I thought he was particular. I didn't see all of it. It got a glance, but I like Schmidt. I mean, it's weird. He was a old school conservative, but let's leave aside his background. I thought this was pretty good. Go for it, Albert.
Must be condemned unequivocally. Jeff Bezos says democracy dies in darkness. Dies with a gunshot at high noon on a Utah community college campus. It dies when a president of the United States says in broad daylight that our cornerstones in our society have no meaning, and only if he wins the election is it legitimate. MAGA is a violent political philosophy because MAGA is fascism. There are many people who say when they see violence in America that this isn't America. Well, they don't know their country because we live in one of the most violent societies on earth. And the political violence we're seeing is a result of something that Matthew Dowd was fired for on MSNBC for telling the truth. Hateful rhetoric follows hateful thoughts and is the preface to violence. Saying that on MSNBC got Matthew Dowd fired. Now, isn't that the curriculum of the Holocaust Museum? Hateful thoughts becoming hateful words becomes hateful actions. Let me show you something. This magazine,
It's Life magazine he's holding up.
is from November of 1938. And the toddler on it celebrates the second anniversary of Life magazine, which was booming. And it's an interesting magazine cover because you can see from behind me what was happening in the world in 1938 by the images on those magazine covers. But for that edition, the editors at Life looked around and said the most important thing for the Life reader is to celebrate the second anniversary of the creation of the magazine. But inside this magazine are the first pictures of the Kristallnacht, the revenge that the Germans take against the Jews, who they blame for the assassination of a German official, a Nazi, in Paris. And the rage that breaks loose, incited by Goebbels, incited by Hitler, smashes thousands of Jewish-owned stores, and great violence is unleashed, the event that predicates the Holocaust. In the magazine, the next story has a picture of Hitler and Goering at Goering's niece's christening. Now, the reality is, in the aftermath of a murderous ideology built on a foundation of violence, used an act of violence as a pretext to commit more violence. I will not get on my knees and capitulate to things that I know are not true. January 6th was a violent coup, and it was incited by the man who is responsible for inciting political violence in America on a 10-year basis, and that man is Donald Trump, period. The death of Charlie Kirk is a tragedy. It was murder, and it happened in front of his children. But Charlie Kirk, in life, was a political extremist and an agitator who profited from division, not inspiration. His ministry was a cancerous one, and it was aimed at killing the American Republic. Charlie Kirk deserved to be debated and condemned, not shot. And Charlie Kirk was 31. Maybe Charlie Kirk, at a 40-year-old man, would have abandoned the dark path he was on. But the chance of that was stolen from him, from us, from all of us. But Charlie Kirk did not serve his country. Charlie Kirk did not serve the American flag, and it is inappropriate for it to be lowered to half-staff above the White House. It's a violation of protocol and meaning. Charlie Kirk served the MAGA flag. He was a political partisan. And we should all appreciate the deep sickness inside of MAGA that says we lower the flag above the White House for Charlie Kirk, but not for Senator Melissa Hortman. Donald Trump, over and over again, has incited violence. And when an 80-year-old man was attacked by a hammer because he was married to the Speaker of the House, MAGA lit up with jokes and celebration, and Charlie Kirk said, a good patriot, they would bail that attacker out.
Okay,
Do not let anybody
this
tell
is
you.
really the point, that there is a double standard, a hypocrisy, and also a clear stirring of the violent pot that comes out of the right. And the reason I wanted you to hear the first part, which relates to Kristallnacht, et cetera, is that I think this is an inflection moment, potentially. It's scary. this kind of political violence is, as I say, it only begets more violence. And so for that reason, I feel as though this is the point at which we need to gather ourselves and have some sanity prevail. And sadly, from the top, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, which in itself is this outgrowth and perversion of American ideals, he is stirring the pot, as I say. He's fanning these flames. He's blaming the left, as he does in every way. He has for as long as he's been running. He blames the media, anything that's unfriendly to him. He calls it fake news. He called the media repeatedly enemies of the people. So you see the way in which the othering of people can, and an ideology, or even just a simple political identity, can be turned into violence. I think this is deeply concerning, you know. Chaplain Fred with a $100 super chat. Wow, that is super generous, first of all. And let me get to the chat. Hi, Mark, Kim, Albert, and Tony. We are one step away from civil war, I think, like Jesse Waters has been saying all along, as well as other Trump minions. Let's not forget, Kirk said he was fine if a percentage was to be killed every year in order to keep our rights to bear arms. Yeah, that, again, was part of the tragic irony around Charlie Kirk, that somehow those who are lost to gun violence, those sweet souls lost to gun violence, are worth it in order for all of us to be able to carry guns and have full gun rights. But I agree with Chaplain Fred. I mean, I just said it before this even appeared on screen. This is an inflection moment. Thank you again, Chaplain Fred. Really generous with the $100 super chat. And I think your point is an important one, an extremely important one. So the weaponization of this is something that's already being done by the top down. And we all know from top down comes all the GOP like tin soldiers walking in lockstep with their leader. On the Kristallnacht, was Kristallnacht before or after the Night of the Long Knives? Night of Long Knives was before Kristallnacht by a few years. But the Night of Long Knives was there were political assassinations going on there in Germany. They say it's wrong to speak bad of those gone from the world, so how do we speak of such a person, says the Lady Beatrice. Well, I'll tell you, let me help you with that, because I think the loss of Charlie Kirk for his family, for his young children, is a tragedy. I mean, the loss of his life is a tragedy. I'm not cheering Charlie Kirk being assassinated or being shot and killed, being murdered. It's just not something to cheer about. As I say, even if you accept this, he was a horrifyingly dangerous figure with this toxic verbiage, racist, misogynist. I mean, he was whipping up a base to hate on the left, on the Democrats. But all that said, his murder can only beget more violence. So even if you don't want to say anything or accept anything about Charlie Kirk, which I completely understand. I mean, you don't want to embrace him in any way. You still have to understand how his larger-than-life figure is represented by a bunch of people who are legitimately moved by his murder, and many of them feel like that's the need to bear arms, the need to take up arms. And I'd love to see them rhetorically join a conversation about issues, but that's not what many of them are about. So it's scary. It makes the political environment in America and the political discourse much more dangerous for everybody. Trevor Starr in Hollywood says, when a despicable person dies, it can be hard to be sad. But what happened to Charlie Kirk was horrific, in capital letters. The assassin should be captured so he can rot in prison for the rest of his long and miserable life. Yeah, and there, Trevor Starr in Hollywood, thank you for the super chat, the $10 super chat. And the truth is that Trevor's right about this. Right? I mean, he's right to both acknowledge the horrifying nature of the rhetoric that Charlie Kirk produced, these extreme positions that Charlie Kirk maintained, the complete MAGAnization of Charlie Kirk. I mean, Charlie Kirk wasn't MAGA from the start. He morphed into MAGA when he was taken into the Trump camp. And then he became the best ambassador for MAGA that they had. It's no wonder Trump wants the flags at half staff. I'm sure he wants full military honors. Who knows what? I mean, there's been a complete degrading of all of that in Washington. He'll get the the Presidential Medal of Freedom posthumously, etc. But more than anything, you can't whitewash who Charlie Kirk was, as we said at the beginning of this show. But this moment in time is a dangerous one and not a good one, and no one should cheer the murder of this guy. Trump is making life more dangerous for all of us, says Gary Russell. That's true in so many ways. And all I can say is that I feel as though this audience sees it clearly. The Lady Beatrice from the $5 Super Chat says, according to one NPR article, he even showed his misogyny when he blamed the shift of liberal views on being unmarried. Is that it?
Taylor Swift.
Taylor's shift, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, yeah. I mean, there's this look, this is a Christo-fascist thing that we talk about from time to time on this show. The rise of a kind of conservatism that has a religiosity associated with it, right? I mean, it's obedience to your husband. It's obedience to the Lord. There's a lot of this. I'm telling you, it's the religious obedience that is pledged and sort of understood and constantly repeated. That obedience is half a click off from obedience to Mr. President, obedience to Donald Trump, obedience to an ideology. So
he was looking at the things he said. He believed that women, really our point was to have babies and be married, and that we had all been lied to by society. And that's why we're confused, and single women are upset and angry at the world, because really we're all just missing our point in life, which is to be little baby makers. Listen, I have babies, that's great, but that's not for everyone.
Well, I mean, he's basically saying, and you should stay with the babies, and you shouldn't be doing the show with Mark Thompson or working at KCBS Radio or KGO Radio, or whatever the hell you want to work. You shouldn't be working at all. Your work is with family. You know, you've drifted.
I guess I'm awful.
Questioning black pilots' qualifications in January of 2024, he said that when he sees a black pilot, he'll think, boy, I hope he's qualified. Calling George Floyd a scumbag during the October 2021 Exposing Critical Racism tour. He criticized Martin Luther King, referred to him as awful, not a good person, said the civil rights movement was a, quote, huge mistake. He called King a, quote, very flawed one, and complained about what he sees as a mythological anti-racist creation. Opposing the concept of white privilege, critical race theory, of course. He said that white privilege is a myth. He was a public critic of critical race theory on college campuses, argued for pushing back against what he sees as race-based or identity-based curricula. Of course, an obvious opponent of DEI and those programs, very tough on immigrants. He claimed that Democratic immigration policies aim to reduce the white demographic share in America. He also used the Great Replacement framing, a controversial idea, associated with racism and also anti-immigration. He's given speeches about what he considers racist theories on America's college campuses, including rejecting many mainstream narratives about systemic racism, I should say. Critics say he stokes outrage by doing that, of course. I mean, in all these ways and others, Charlie Kirk was a toxic figure on the American political scene. He was also an incredibly significant figure on the American political scene. And his death and his murder is all bad. It's all bad. Trump was alive during Robert Kennedy's assassination, Vilma says. Thank you for the $10 super chat. She says Trump was alive during Robert Kennedy's assassination, JFK's assassination, and MLK's assassination as a Democrat. Now, Donald Trump is a Republican. Now, Donald Trump knows how to take political advantage. Yeah. And finally, Luis says, with a $5 super chat, gang, get ready for Trump's marketing of this event. Kirk Trump Bibles, T-shirts, maybe signed blood-drenched strips of Kirk's death shirt. Monetize everything. I mean, that's really grim and gross.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening, but I do see, as we've said, I do see a celebration of Kirk's life that is fair in a personal sense, as I say. I really do mourn for his kids, particularly, and his wife. But you can pervert that mourning into lionizing this man and ignoring so much of the reality of the toxic nature of his rhetoric and the hate-filled nature of his rhetoric. But I'm going to say this in relation to Charlie Kirk. He went on to the college campuses. He welcomed debate. He wanted debate. In fact, his event, and then I'll get to David Katz, his event at which he was murdered had a component where people stand up in the audience and they do a back and forth. It's called Prove Me Wrong. He did it at a bunch of different college campuses and a bunch of different rallies. And so that question about firearms and about the trans movement, which was being asked at the moment that he was responding and he was murdered, that was part of the Prove Me Wrong back and forth. So I'll give him this. He welcomed opposing opinions. He was a powerful political figure, as I say. I think more powerful for the way in which he marshaled and ramped up support for MAGA philosophies and Donald Trump, more powerful than Joe Rogan, just to put it in a context that you perhaps are aware of because of Rogan's notoriety. But, all right, I've got David Katz coming up. Smash the like button if you would.
With your iron rod.
Kim, you had something?
Oh, before we get to David Katz, a quick mention. There's a $100,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of the killer in the Charlie Kirk case. And I thought that was interesting how much energy and money is being devoted to that. But we're not hearing much about another shooting that happened yesterday in Colorado, the school shooting where 2 high school students were shot, or 2 people at the campus in Colorado, Evergreen High School, were shot. The shooter died. The kids are in the hospital, reportedly in critical condition. It's indicative.
The shooter died of a self-inflicted gun wound, I think. Right?
Indicative of how much importance we're placing on someone like Charlie Kirk, but we're not caring about the kids of America, right?
We become inured to this stuff going on college, on college campuses and in elementary schools and high schools. We become completely accustomed to it. It's horrible, but it's part of this proliferation of guns that Kirk was such a tremendous advocate for. He wanted absolutely no controls on gun ownership,
and
he's pretty well got it in America.
The other mention is you talked about all the racism that Kirk spewed over time. And today we have potential threats that are triggering lockdowns at the HBCUs across the South because bomb threats are coming into these historically black colleges and universities on the heels of that Kirk shooting. So it's just a snapshot of what's happening in America.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.